Bill Plante spoke earlier with British humorist Chris Morris, who's making his directorial debut with the film Four Lions. As you'll see, Morris searches for humor in a pretty controversial subject. Take a look.
And we're joined now by Chris Morris, the writer-director of Four Lions, a film about terrorism, but it's a comedy. How can that be?
Well, it comes from real life. You wouldn't expect me to say that, would you? But that's exactly what happened. I was reading into the subject, looking for some serious background, and what I found, in fact, was a succession of events which were much funnier than I thought they should be. The first one that kicked me off into it was a story about some Yemeni jihadis who wanted to blow up a US warship by ramming it with an exploding boat. They assembled their gear on the quayside at 3 in the morning. They put their launch in the water. They filled it with explosives, and it sank.
Because it was too heavy. So there is humor in...
Well, that seemed like a scene from a caper or something, and it didn't stop there. You know, there was a cell of Canadian jihadis that wanted to assassinate the Canadian Prime Minister, but then they forgot who he was.
Yeah, and you've got 4 characters, 5 actually, in the north of England who have varying degrees of intelligence and not a lot of luck at what they're trying to do.
You're very kind about them. I mean, it's called the bunch of guys theory in intelligence circles. It's basically the problem that you have when you haven't got a big pool to select these guys from, so you get an average bunch of guys, you set them a quite complicated task, and oh dear, it's not necessarily going to work out the way you planned it.
Well, the brain of the group is Omar, who has a wife and a child. Now, we know, of course, that jihadis and suicide bombers do leave behind family, but you humanize this guy in the film, and yet he has a very dark side.
Yeah, I mean, that comes from real life too. They've got different, you know, there's Barry at the opposite end. I don't think he's got a functioning relationship with anybody. But Omar, yes, has a wife and child. And that comes again from what you see in real life. You see occasionally that wives or sisters are involved in fostering the ideology. There was a case in a Dutch court recently where there's some jihadis in the dock who were trying to get themselves off the hook. So they were recanting from their extreme ideology, and one of their wives shouted out from the dock, "I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you."
Yeah, but she can't do that. Only the men can, right?
She can. She can do that, and she did that, and she was extremely cross with her husband for having let her down.
I can imagine. I mean, these guys are incompetent, and in that sense, they're sort of everyman, right? Dreams bigger than reality or possibility.
Well, why would human frailty make a polite sidestep around a jihadi cell when it seems to infect all the rest of us?
What's the reaction from Muslims who've seen this film?
Pretty good, actually. I mean, we did a screening recently in Bradford, which is a strongly Muslim city in Britain, and our cast were mobbed as they walked from the station to the cinema. So they sort of embraced it with open arms, because I think, bizarrely, they see it as a positive depiction.
They don't take offense, in other words.
No, because I think you have to drive a coach and horses through a holy text or play with holy icons in order to do that, and that's not what this film does. In fact, this ideology, the more you look into it, the more extrapolated and distant it is actually from the core of Islam. It's a hard-baked, radical, revolutionary ideology.
You've said, Chris, that the Disney film The Lion King was one of the would-be jihadists' favorites. Why?
Well, it's a story about good and evil, and that's why it's in the film. I came across guys in the real world who had radical opinions, who liked The Lion King. They also liked 300. They liked Lord of the Rings. But The Lion King was the one that fitted the script, and it tells, the reason it feels odd is because you're at the wrong end of the story. You know, these guys are relating to Simba. They think they're the good guys fighting Scar. And then once you see it that way round, it makes sense.
Well, how do you compare it to other films which are sort of over-the-top satire, like Dr. Strangelove or The Life of Brian?
I wouldn't dare. I love both those films, and I wouldn't dare put my tin of film in the same vault as theirs. I mean, you know, I think they're up there to be admired, and you know, I'm not in the business of comparing my film certainly to greats like that, but I'm glad you did.
Well, satire is something that I don't think we get enough of, and I think the audience will agree. This film opened already, I think, November 5th, right?
That's right, and it's running for this week and next week, and we're hoping to build it up, but we're in 8 cities across the states, and so far, our previews and the scenes, you know, the screenings we've done so far, seems that some people said Americans couldn't take this. I think the opposite. I think they've absolutely gone for it.
What did American audiences say? Did you talk to any of them?
Yeah, and the most instructive...
I mean, like New York.
Yeah, exactly. That was the one that I thought, if anywhere is going to feel maybe a bit sensitive about this, it would be New York. But they chided me for that, and they said, come on, we've actually been through this stuff. We're out the other side, and we want to laugh at it. Bring it on.
All right. Chris Morris, writer-director, Four Lions. Good to have you with us. Thanks.
Thanks, Bill.